Are the headlines about a looming housing crisis making you nervous? What if I told you that the real story is far more nuanced than what's being reported? Let's uncover the hidden truths behind this shift. For many, the mere mention of a housing market downturn triggers memories of 2008, the job losses, the foreclosures, the economic devastation. It's natural to feel anxious when we see headlines about rising interest rates and potential market corrections. But what if I told you that the forces shaping today's housing landscape are fundamentally different from those that led to the crash of 2008? This isn't a simple rerun. We're going to break down exactly why this isn't 2008 again and what the key differences really mean for you. So, let's begin by asking the crucial question. What actually caused the 2008 crisis, and how does it stack up against today's market? Before we delve into the current market, it's crucial to understand the events that led to the 2008 housing crisis. This wasn't just a market fluctuation. It was a systemic failure rooted in unsustainable lending practices. So, what went wrong? In the early 2000s, a perfect storm was brewing, starting with the rise of what were known as subprime mortgages. Banks, fueled by an insatiable appetite for profit, began offering loans to individuals with poor credit histories, often with little to no verification of their ability to repay. These were not your standard mortgages. Many came with adjustable rates that started low, only to skyrocket later, leaving homeowners with payments they simply couldn't afford. This created an artificial demand, inflating housing prices to unsustainable levels. These risky loans were bundled together into complex financial instruments called mortgage-backed securities and sold to investors worldwide, spreading the risk far beyond individual borrowers. When homeowners started defaulting on their mortgages, the dominoes began to fall, triggering a collapse of these securities and leading to a full-blown financial crisis. As foreclosures mounted and home values plummeted, the entire economy was dragged into a period known as the Great Recession. This was a very bleak time that saw millions losing their jobs, homes, and financial security. Understanding this cascade of events is crucial for appreciating how different the current situation is. Now, let's look at today's housing market. It's important to see that it's not the same as it was in 2008. Things have changed a lot since then, starting with how banks give out loans. Back in the early 2000s, banks were giving loans to almost anyone, even people who didn't have good credit. They didn't check very well if people could pay the loans back. But now, banks are much more careful. They have to follow rules that were made after 2008, and these rules make sure people can really afford the loans they're getting. Banks now check very carefully if people have jobs and good credit before they give them a loan. This makes it less likely that people will take out loans they can't pay back. Another big difference is how many houses are for sale. In 2008, there were too many houses. But right now, there aren't enough. Not many new houses were built over the last few years, and there are many people wanting to buy. This makes the price of houses go up, but it also means that the market is not just about people taking out bad loans like in 2008. Also, people who own homes today have more money in their homes than they did back then. We call this equity. It's like having savings in your house. In 2008, a lot of people owed more money on their homes than the houses were worth. But now, people have more equity, so they have a kind of safety net if the market changes. So, even though there's a lot of talk about rising interest rates and problems with the economy, it's important to know that the housing market today is much stronger than it was before the crash in 2008. Let's now move past the basic differences and explore some of the less obvious factors shaping today's housing market. It's not enough to look only at lending or supply. We need to look at how other factors are influencing the market. One key element is the role of large investors. Companies that buy lots of properties, called institutional investors, are becoming bigger players in the market. They often purchase homes in bulk, impacting the number of houses available for regular buyers and how home prices are set. This is different from the old days when most homes were bought by families. These institutional investors can influence the housing market by buying properties in bulk and renting them out. Another factor that's not often talked about is the supply chain. We've had trouble getting the materials needed to build new homes. Things like lumber, appliances, and even paint have been hard to get, which means it takes longer and costs more to build new houses. This makes it harder to keep up with the demand for homes, pushing prices up further. And finally, there's the psychology of the market. How people think about buying and selling homes can have a big impact on the market. Right now, many people are watching what happens, unsure about buying, because prices are so high and there is so much economic uncertainty. Sellers may also be waiting to sell because they are unsure about what to do and may think they will get a better price later. This wait-and-see approach adds an extra layer of complexity to the market. So, it's not just about the basics of supply and demand. It's also about who's buying homes, how easy it is to build them, and what people are thinking and feeling about the market. These less obvious elements play a crucial role in shaping the current housing market. Now, let's explore an area that might seem unrelated but is actually connected to the housing market in surprising ways: the growing popularity of electric vehicles, or EVs. You might be wondering, what do cars have to do with houses? Well, it's about how people are choosing to spend their money and prioritize their lives. As more and more people are considering purchasing EVs, this new preference is beginning to have an effect on the larger economy. People may decide to put off buying a home to afford an EV, or they may consider renting as opposed to owning, to free up funds for other purchases. This shift in priorities is having an indirect but real impact on the demand for homes. We're seeing that people's priorities are shifting from homeownership to things like EVs, travel, and experiences. Also, the growth of the EV industry itself is creating new economic opportunities. More and more companies that make EVs and related products are appearing, and these new companies are changing the job market. This growing industry, along with other economic changes, may mean the economy will look a lot different soon, which could also affect home values. In short, the rise of EVs is not just about cars. It's a signal of how our economy and priorities are changing, and this has an indirect influence on the housing market. These changes highlight the interconnectedness of our economy and how choices in one area can create ripple effects in seemingly unrelated areas. So we've explored some of the nuances. Let's get to the heart of the matter. What really sets 2024 apart from 2008? It's not just about surface-level changes. It's about understanding the fundamental differences in the economic landscape. One big difference lies in household debt. Back in 2008, many people had lots of debt tied up in their mortgages, which, due to predatory loans and low verification, caused the massive fallout we saw. Today, while consumer debt is a concern, it's spread out more and isn't just connected to housing. We're seeing higher levels of credit card and student loan debt, which do impact consumer spending and saving, but it isn't directly tied to the same toxic mortgage practices we saw in the previous crash. Another critical difference is how the government has responded to the housing market since the crash. After 2008, new rules were put in place to prevent banks from taking the same risks with lending. These policies have created a much more stable lending environment than we saw back then. These regulations, such as the Dodd-Frank Act, were designed to ensure that banks have enough capital to absorb losses and to regulate mortgage-backed securities. However, these regulations haven't been fully tested in a real crisis, and there is always the potential for loopholes or unforeseen consequences. Finally, and importantly, the underlying strength of the economy is different. Before 2008, the economy was over-reliant on the housing market. It was a bubble waiting to burst. Today, the economy is more diverse, with a lot more different types of businesses, which means it's not as dependent on housing for growth. We're seeing growth in technology, renewable energy, and other industries. These new avenues of growth should cushion the blow if the housing market cools down. So, it's not just about stricter lending rules or different supply and demand. It's about a completely different set of circumstances, including debt, government intervention, and the economy itself. This is the core reason why a direct repeat of 2008 is unlikely. So, given all these differences, how should we approach the current housing market? The key is to move beyond the fear-driven headlines and focus on making smart, well-informed decisions. Firstly, it's crucial to stay informed. Don't rely on sensationalist news. Instead, seek out reliable data and analysis from credible sources. Understand that the market is complex and that there are no easy answers. This means keeping track of housing data, interest rates, and other factors to help you make better choices. Secondly, it's also important to seek expert advice. This isn't a market to navigate alone. Consulting with a financial advisor or a knowledgeable real estate professional can provide personalized guidance that's tailored to your individual situation and goals. They can help you assess risks and identify opportunities that you might have missed. Thirdly, adopt a long-term perspective. Don't let short-term market fluctuations derail your long-term financial plan. Whether you're considering buying or selling a home, focus on what aligns with your broader financial goals, and remember that real estate is often a long-term investment. The market will have its ups and downs, but staying focused on the big picture is the best way to protect yourself. Navigating this market isn't about predicting the future. It's about being prepared, staying informed, and making well-thought-out decisions. Knowledge, expert guidance, and a long-term view are your best tools to manage the uncertainty. While there are valid concerns about interest rates and affordability, the underlying dynamics are fundamentally different. We're not facing the same kind of reckless lending, oversupply, or lack of homeowner equity that triggered the last crisis. Instead, we're seeing a complex mix of new factors influencing the market, from institutional investors to supply chain issues to even the rise of electric vehicles. This means that instead of succumbing to fear, it's time to embrace a new perspective. Considering all these changes, the most crucial question we should all be asking is, how can we use this information to make more informed and strategic decisions in our own lives? If you found this analysis helpful, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more in-depth explorations, and check out our recent video, Russia Responds to US Sanctions by Limiting Grain Exports to Asia, a Calculated Retaliation, for more on how global events impact our economy.